There you see the Democratic donkey and the Republican elephant looking into gramophones, phonographs, or whatever, making recordings and listening to the recordings of the candidates. The year was 1908. And in 1908, everything changed in the way of the political campaigns and the way they were run. For in 1908, you had a campaign for the first time in which the voices of the candidates could be heard. This had never happened before. We have, and I have heard on YouTube, various recordings of Grover Cleveland. That isn't Grover Cleveland. There are recordings of William McKinley. That isn't William McKinley. There are recordings of Theodore Roosevelt, although it was never done when he was running. Most of them were done later. In fact, the Edisons were done in 1912 when he was running as a bull moose candidate in 1912. So the whole thing about candidates and running for office and making speeches that could be heard by the public did not become a reality until the year of 1908, as you saw with that cartoon which I started this off on. That cartoon was in a magazine called Review of Reviews, which was a magazine dedicated to politics, international news, and what was important at the time. And of course, it was a big deal. For the first time, you could actually hear the voices of the candidates. What I'm going to be doing after this recording, you'll be hearing, I'm going to put 2 samples of those recordings from 1908 on online and let you hear them from that first batch of recordings. It's really amazing when you think about it. William Jennings Bryan on the Democrats. This was his 3rd try and his last. And running against him was William Howard Taft, who had been the Secretary of War under Theodore Roosevelt. And actually, at the time of this campaign, their friendship started to fall apart. Nonetheless, you could go to various places and see mannequins set up representing the 2 candidates, and behind them would be phonographs playing. It was an amazing thing. And of course, today, everything's changed. Everything has been inspired by that initial series of recordings in 1908. I want to show you some examples here, if I grab a few here. This is kind of a neat one. This is the Coolidge campaign record from 1924. You don't see those very often. It's kind of an unusual thing, but when he was running for office, they made a campaign record. Lots of people did. In fact, I'll be putting on other campaigns as we go on here through some of the other stuff. Let's see, what else do we have here? I have the Nixon record. When he was running for office, they had the Nixon record. And of course, one of the most famous didn't have the voice of the candidate on at all. It's this one. High Hopes. Jack Kennedy. Of course, who was singing? Frank Sinatra. And that was the campaign that Hollywood got involved with very strongly. So, nonetheless, I want to introduce the series. I'm going to put a whole bunch of voice recordings on of various candidates, various individuals, and capture some of them. There are some very interesting anecdotes that go with this. I know when the Victor recording artists were visiting Theodore Roosevelt, they asked him, would you like to mention something for posterity? And Roosevelt's answer was interesting. He says, I don't give a damn about posterity. He cared about right at that moment. Warren G. Harding was a very different soul, and we'll actually play some recordings from the 1920 campaign as well. So, this was just to introduce the first, and I'm going to let you hear, in just a short while, in another recording that I put here on YouTube, the first campaign recordings from 1908, William Jennings Bryan and William Howard Taft. And it would lead to what is now over 100 years of campaign recordings, advertisements, and commercials. Thank you.